I am Dr. Balarubi, Assistant Professor in the Department of Economics. So students, in today's class, we are going to discuss about the law of returns. So in the previous video, we have discussed that just in this theory of production, there are two laws. One is law of variable proportions and another one is law of returns to scale, right? In this video, we will discuss about the law of returns. See here, this law of returns explains the relationship between input as well as output. See, here there are three types of law. One is law of diminishing returns. See, this law of diminishing returns is otherwise known as law of increasing cost. Students, listen very carefully. This is just opposite relationship. Therefore, law of diminishing returns is otherwise known as law of increasing cost. Similarly, if you see this law of increasing returns, it is otherwise known as law of decreasing cost. Then the third one is law of constant returns. It is otherwise known as law of constant cost. So these are the three different law under this law of returns. First, let us concentrate on the first one, that is law of diminishing returns. As far as this law of diminishing returns is concerned, mainly it was introduced by David Ricardo, J.S. Mill, Malthus, as well as Alfred Marshall. See, in the starting of this class itself, I told you this law of diminishing returns is always known as law of increasing cost. See here, law of diminishing return means when output increases, returns reduces. Listen very carefully. When we use more and more output, if the return reduces and cost increases, this stage is known as law of diminishing returns. See, initially when we use more input, sometimes the revenue from this input reduces. And if you compare the cost of production continuously increases. So this relationship or this stage is known as law of diminishing returns or law of increasing cost. Then come to the second law, that is law of increasing returns. See, it is just opposite to the law of diminishing returns. When we use more inputs, the return increases, but cost reduces. It is known as law of increasing returns or law of diminishing cost. So when we are using more and more inputs, suppose if returns increases, at the same time cost reduces, it is known as law of increasing returns. Then come to the third one, that is law of constant returns. See the title itself, we have a clear idea. This law of constant returns is otherwise known as law of constant cost also. It means when output increases, the cost as well as the return remains constant. It is known as law of constant returns. So when we use more input, suppose a return as well as cost remains constant, mean it is known as law of constant returns. So these three laws has been clearly illustrated in this diagram. So in the x-axis, you measure the input, and in y-axis, we measure the returns or marginal products. See, initially it increases, then it remains constant, then it reduces. So the shape of this line is like this. So the first stage is known as law of increasing returns. See, if you see this line from this point to this point, it is known as law of increasing returns, because here when input increases, this return also increases. Then come to the second stage. See, if you see this cursor, you can see in this stage, whatever the input increases, this returns remains constant. Therefore, it is a law of constant returns. Then come to the next segment. Continuously it declines. So here when input increases, this returns reduces. Therefore, this stage is known as law of diminishing returns. So these are the important things under the law of returns to scale. Okay, students, hope that you have a clear idea about this law of returns to scale. Thank you.